Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Board of Education. The board started closed session this evening at 6:50. We had two topics on our agenda: employment of employee and collective negotiations. We will start with the roll call. Mrs. Walsh, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Hirsch? Present. Mrs. Davy? Present. Mrs. Ostajic?
Present.
Mr. Collins? Present. Mrs. Durrani?
Here.
Ms. Conroy?
Here.
Mr. Karpus?
Here.
Sorry, so we have 7 board members present, none absent. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We start our evening with student recognition. We have 3 groups that we'll be recognizing tonight. Dr. Krizik, can you give us an introduction, please? Yeah.
Over the past several years, Science Olympiad in each of the schools has continued to evolve and grow, and I believe this is the second year York has had a Science Olympiad team, and I believe it's the third year for the middle schools. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the achievements of students from both Bryan Middle School and York Community High School in the Science Olympiad event that was held at the statewide level. And I'd like to turn this portion of the meeting over to Jeremy Paschke and Mary Beth Glay, who will share with us the achievements of these students at this competition. So if they could please come forth to the podium.
Hello, well, I'm Mary Beth Glay, and I would like to call my students that won medals with us at the state competition: Billy Delaney, Drew Douglas, Matthew Naviera, come on up, and Meg Grassi is not here yet, but hopefully she'll get here soon. She's in transport from a viola lesson. So come on up, guys. Show off how nice you look. All the way, come on up. Stand over here. All right, I just wanted to say a few words about what an awesome job these guys did. First of all, about a month ago was our state competition, and the whole team worked hard to get these guys in their place, and the whole team worked together to place 14th out of 42 middle schools at the state level. We started off with invitationals in January, which was marginal. The regionals, we took second place, which won our bid to state. And then, of course, at the state competition, I'm going to start with Billy and Drew. We're right here on the end. Billy and Drew won second place out of 42 teams. Second place in an event called Trajectory, where they had to calibrate an interesting painted mechanism to hit 2 different targets plus a bucket. And I believe you guys were one of the only teams that actually tried the bucket. And their projectile hit the bucket, got in the bucket, but it bounced out. So I think that's one of the second place. But they did an awesome job, second place. And then Drew and Meg, who's not here yet, also won second place for Science Crime Busters, which is an event where basically they have to perform a bunch of scientific tests to determine, solve a crime. And they won second place in that event. And then lastly, Meg, again, who's not here, and Matthew on the end won first place in state for an event called Compute This, where they had to use their computing skills, the internet, create some graphs and pie charts and things like that to show data. So congratulations to them. I'm very proud of them. Good job, guys.
Boys, can you, Mary Beth, could you please stay for a few minutes? Mrs. Ostajic has a resolution she'd like to read.
Thank you. And Congratulations to all of you. I just did a little bit of homework on the Science Olympiad website just to understand a little bit more about it. And I know the competition's been around for a long time. District 205, we are relatively newcomers to the program, so I think this kind of success is really fantastic. I know that a ton of time went in preparing not only for you, but also for the sponsors that help support you in this, and for your parents and all the extra time that they were probably shuttling you around. So I guess we need to give your sponsors and your parents some congratulations too. But tonight we're honoring you, and we are incredibly proud of you. And with that, I'd like to read a resolution. Because the Science Olympiad competition is recognized as a prestigious academic science competition in the state of Illinois, and because this competition encourages excellence in the part of individual students and requires intense preparation and study, and because Bryan Middle School students Matthew Niavara, Meg Grassi, placed first in Compute This, Drew Douglas and Meg Grassi placed second in Science Crime Busters, and Drew Douglas and Billy Delaney placed second in Trajectory. And because these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to Bryan Middle School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community School District 205 express congratulations to these students for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
Good evening, Dr. Krizik, members of the board. My name is Jeremy Paschke, and I'm the head coach of the York Science Olympiad team, and I am very fortunate to work with two assistant coaches who have been very helpful the past couple of years. They're here tonight, Miss Cindy Bradley and Mr. Jeff Drock. Thank you. And their hard work should not go unrecognized. But we're here tonight to honor the hard work of 4 students, especially, who've worked very hard throughout the year. Miss Kaylee Avelo, would she please come up here? And Mr. Brian Serrano and Mr. Gavin Fahey. Could you 3 guys come up here? We're missing 1 student, and that's Hari Sridhar. He would be here, but he's being honored by the Spanish Honor Society tonight. His dad is back there watching, and that's just great. Well, we had another successful year, and thanks not only to these 3 and 4 students, but to the whole team. 15 students compete. We've had almost 30 students be very active throughout the entire year, coming to practices and various invites and regionals and everything else. Kaylee and Hari worked together on an event called Protein Modeling, where they had to research, it was the H1N1 virus, wasn't it? And they had to simulate this on computer and also in a 3-dimensional model. And they spent lots and lots of time with one of our resident biology teachers and really excelled at that, scored 3rd place in state, second only to IMSA and, of course, the notorious New Trier High School. And Gavin and Brian scored 1st place in an event called geocaching, where they traveled around the entire U of I campus using GPS to track down various clues and answer questions about geography and earth science. So once again, congratulations to you 3, and I look forward to working with Brian and to Hari next year, and Kaylee and Gavin. York will be we'll be missing you very much next year. You're definitely wonderful contributions to our team and to our school, so thank you.
We're doing a little swap up on our technology tonight. We're a little bit challenged, but again, I would like to just extend my congratulations to the students. Just, again, in looking at some of the schools that we've competed again, and I know York in the high school event is also relatively new, so it's fantastic to see this kind of success, and especially in the particular areas of study that you have all excelled in. With that, I'd like to read a proclamation. Because the Science Olympiad competition is recognized as a prestigious academic science competition in the state of Illinois, and because this competition encourages excellence on the part of individual students and requires intense preparation and study, because York Community High School students Gavin Fahey, Brian Serrano placed first in geocaching, and Kaylee Avilo and Hari Sridhar placed third in protein modeling. And because these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community School District 205 express our congratulations to these students for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
In addition to recognizing the achievements of our science students from both Bryan Middle School and New York Community High School, we are also here this evening to recognize the accomplishments of students at York Community High School that have recently participated in the State Skills USA competition in Springfield several weeks ago. And tonight we have Ken Ross, who is the sponsor of the Skills USA competition, to share with us information about what this competition entailed and the success of 6 of our students at the statewide level. So Mr. Ross, if you could please come to the podium.
Why don't you guys get like this up to here and then kind of that way face down? No. You messed up my order. I'm going to go this way. Stay where. See, I got to go military here. All right, so Mark, I'm here to join. Amanda, Sam, Swoop. Great. Uh-oh. Hello. All right, we're all in order here. To make sure that I don't miss someone, is Brianna out in the audience somewhere? We had one student who cannot attend tonight, so. Good evening. As usual, I have a prepared statement, only because of the fact that I'm afraid I'll forget something as usual. I'd like to thank the school board and Dr. Krizik for giving me the opportunity to honor these students and for supporting industrial technology at York High School. I'd also like to thank Principal Smith and her administration at York for their support of our students and the industrial technology programs that we have at York. Your support gives us the opportunity to educate and train our students for a successful future and participate in these exciting career-building competitions. A little note on Skills USA. In years past, I've kind of briefly talked about what we do, and a little bit more of a detail of what we do here. Let's see if I can move this. Skills USA is a national student organization that has over 305,000 student and instructor members organized in 54 state and territorial associations. Skills USA provides quality educational experiences for students in leadership, teamwork, citizenship, and character development. Skills USA also establishes industry, I lost my place here. Skills USA provides quality educational experiences for students in leadership, teamwork, citizenship, and character development. Skills USA also establishes industry standards for job skill training in the classroom and promote community service. Skills USA is recognized by the U.S. Department of Education and is cited as a successful model of employer-driven youth development training by the U.S. Department of Labor. Career and technical education courses at York incorporate content-appropriate reading, writing, math, and speech skills. It's important to note that students who compete in State Skills USA competitions are required to demonstrate these skills during their competitions. I'm pleased to honor these career and tech ed students for their outstanding achievements in principles of technology, essay and personal narrative writing, screen printing technology, and nail care model competitions. Currently at York, our students participate in Skills USA in automotive technology, drafting CAD, cabinet making, graphic arts, screen printing technology, and principles of technology. York students who attend TCD this year compete in cosmetology-related competitions. This year, a total of 5 students from auto tech, 2 students in cabinet making, 2 students in graphic communications, 6 students in screen print technology, 5 students in principles of physics technology, and 3 students from TCD qualified in cosmetology for the State Skills USA competition held in April in Springfield, Illinois. At this time, I'd like to recognize our 6 state winners. I'd like to congratulate our Principles of Technology students, Peter Kuchin, who placed first. He's over here. Mark Vicari, who placed second, and Jojoy Verghese, who placed third. This competition required students to choose a physics concept, write a research paper, present and demonstrate their physics concept, and be able to defend their position in front of a panel of judges. Next, I'd like to congratulate Amanda Smith for placing second in the personal narrative and third in high school essay leadership competitions. Amanda is a student in our auto diagnostics class at York, and Amanda was required to write an essay before the conference about this year's conference theme. As an added note, Amanda entered, along with entering the essay competition, she also participated in the full service auto competition while she was there. So she did quite a great job. Next, I'd like to congratulate Salman Mirza for placing third in screen printing technology competition. Salman was required to complete a number of tasks to produce a screen printed shirt. Salman had to perform the measurement and layout work, correctly set up and print the shirt, and also had to complete an interview with a judge regarding his work completed at the competition. I'd like to speak one part about Brianna Black, who unfortunately was not here tonight. She placed first in the nail care model competition. Brianna is currently a York student attending TCD and represented Technology Center of DePage at the state competition. The contest included a series of testing situations, including oral presentations and technical applications. By placing first, Pete Kuchin and Brianna Black, I'm not sure about Brianna, I haven't talked to her, but I'm pretty sure about Pete. He will be representing Elmhurst District 205, York High School, and the state of Illinois by competing against students at the Skills USA National Conference and Competition in Kansas City, Missouri, this June 21st through the 26th. These hardworking, skilled young people, along with the students who did not place in the top 3 at the state level, represented York High School and their community very well, and we're very proud of them. Congratulations to all of the winners, and thanks again for your support.
The primary goal of the Skills USA is to ensure America has a skilled workforce. And I think all of you have demonstrated that our future is in pretty good hands here. We are pleased to honor not only our talented students, but also celebrate the success of our industrial arts curriculum. As we've heard, really our program starts in middle school, but at the high school it really expands and even beyond into the TCD program. So I think that we as a district have something to be proud of, and we celebrate the success of your students and the reflection that you bring back to our curriculum. And with that, I would like to read a proclamation. Because the Skills USA Leadership Competition is recognized throughout the nation as a prestigious student recognition program in industrial arts education, and because this program encourages excellence on the part of individual students and encourages them to pursue careers requiring specific skills, and because your community high school students, Peter Kuchin, earned first place, Marcus Vicari placed second, and Jojo Verghese placed third in Principles of Technology, Amanda Smith earned second place in personal narrative event and third in the essay competition. Salman Mirza placed third in screen printing technology, and Brianna Black placed first in the nail care model. And because these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community School District 205 express our congratulations to these students for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thanks.
We're going to take just a minute break. Thank you to the students and their families who've come out. If you'd like to stay again for the rest of our meeting, you're welcome to. If you want to take a minute and exit and work on your homework, now would be the time to do it.
You're going to have to download that, aren't you? Yeah, fabulous.
Then you guys can share this one.
Is it always on?
It's always on, yes. Yeah, there's no switching on this.
Right, making sure that I don't.
Yeah.
If you know, that was specific on salary things. You know, there's some things you came up with. And so then, I sat there quiet as a titmouse and I went quiet, which was knowing that all these conversations that I want to, there's going to be a real harsh reality at some point. I started that conversation till yesterday.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on with our agenda. This point in the meeting, we typically have public comment. We don't have anybody signed up to speak tonight, but just a general reminder, anybody that wants to address the board can do so. The sign-up list is up, available outside until the start of the meeting, and you can come and speak up to 3 minutes. That's our time limit, just to make sure that we keep our time on track for our meeting agenda. But seeing we have no comments, we'll move ahead to Superintendent's communication. Dr. Krizik.
At our last meeting, we had several parents talk about the cohort program that was established for next school year, with a great deal of work that has been put into this by Principal Diana Smith, Mary Howard, and several Charles Avando, and several staff members at York. As a result of the meeting 2 weeks ago, we indicated that we would provide the board with an update in terms of the kinds of information and communication that has been shared with cohort parents. I'm happy to share with you that on Monday, May 3rd, there were approximately 150 parents, slightly more, in attendance at a presentation that Ms. Smith and her team put together to kind of do a very thorough overview of the conceptualization of the cohort program, what it's connected to, what the assessment process looked like, what the elements of the program were going to be, who the faculty were going to be, and what the curriculum overview was going to be like, as well as infused in that presentation, we're addressing a variety of the questions that had been asked by parents over the past several weeks and several months. I'm just going to give you just some key highlights, and Ms. Smith is here also this evening to answer any questions that you may have. The concept of this program was highly connected to the district's strategic plan, which indicates that we will put programs and practices in place to advance the achievement of students. From that, a school improvement plan had been developed at York that was in response to both their PSAE data, as well as in connection with the objectives of the district's strategic plan. That plan was presented sometime in October to you as a board that needed approval, and that was approved in October. The program development has, I will say, evolved since the initial conceptualization of the program, and as the team did their research on some practices as well as some programs that are aimed to improve the achievement of students, specifically literacy and reading improvement of students. In this presentation, I will have to say to you that Ms. Smith was both genuine and sincere in her communication to all of the members of the audience. I think explaining and understanding their disappointment with the manner in which they received communication about the program, and as such identified some structural changes and procedural changes that York will embark on for future freshman classes and the communication of the programs and courses they are recommended to be in. She thoroughly reviewed each of the components of the Explore, the reading CBMs, as well as the MAP data, and shared, I believe, information that parents may have heard for the very first time, which underscored for us the critical need for us to communicate in multiple, in more consistent ways, assessment data for all of our parents in the K-8, K-12 continuum. The parents should not be hearing for the very first time the achievement of their students, or hearing for the very first time the value in which we place on the assessments that we give to students. I think that's a critical piece that we need to be discussing at a leadership level and at a school-wide level. The concept of having the double block of the reading period was also explained, and the objectives of which they are trying to achieve in that course were explained, including how the course would be graded, how the course would be coded. All of those pieces were explained to parents. In listening to parents over the past several months, Ms. Smith and her team identified some flexible offerings as it related to the design of the program. And the flexible pieces to that program were the, I'll say, opt-out provision of the cohort period, which will provide students with access to math, social studies, science, and language arts teachers in a structured setting, a study hall, so to speak, but not a place where students are just there to work on work, but there to engage with adults. However, if parents feel that their students are organized and do not need that support, that's a piece of the program that they could choose to opt out of. And that was explained. Ms. Smith also reaffirmed that should any parent feel that this is not a program that meets the needs of their student, that they could opt out of the entire program. While not advised or encouraged, we are choosing to be respectful of the choices that parents are making for their students at this time. Ms. Smith spent some time reviewing the staff that will be teaching both the English 9 course as well as the social studies course for the cohort. Currently, there are 2 vacancies in the English department, and specifically their targeted strategy for hiring individuals is to look for individuals that are not only highly qualified under NCLB, which all of the staff in the English department and social studies departments at York are highly qualified under NCLB. They're looking to further add to the capacity of the English or the language arts department at York by also looking for teachers that possess certifications with advanced degrees and coursework, specifically in reading. And while the support program will be taught by either these new individuals as well as some of the current faculty that are highly qualified under NCLB, adding depth and breadth to that department is one of the goals that they have identified for themselves as they seek to advance the achievement of students. Charles Avando spent time introducing the faculty that will be teaching the World Studies course for students that are in the cohort program, and essentially explained how some of the strategies that they will be using in the teaching of this course are in alignment with the strategies that are being used in the reading support course that is offered to cohort students. So there is a tremendous amount of work that is being done in the alignment, in the consistency of the strategies that students will be exposed to through this experience. There was a discussion of scheduling considerations. One of the questions parents had and were concerned about was, were students going to be with the same group of students all day long? And by virtue of the complex schedule and the choice of electives that students make, it is highly unlikely that students will be with the same group of students all day long. So students that will be together in English 9 may not be the same configurations of students that are in the reading support period, and may not be the same configuration of students that are in the social studies period, and may not be in the same configuration of students that are in the support period that is offered to students in the program. The presentation lasted for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then the floor was open for parents to ask questions, and those questions went on till about almost 10 o'clock. And in listening to comments parents were making, there were several parents that said, after hearing the information presented in the comprehensive way that it was on May 3rd, they have changed their mind and are in favor of having their student participate in the program. There wasn't any parent that publicly stood up and said that they didn't hear anything to withdraw their student from the program if they had already been enrolled. So I think that that was positive. That spoke to, obviously, the need for parents to have their questions answered, as well as for the quality of information that was presented at that meeting. So that's basically the high-level overview of what happened on May 3rd. And York's commitment to meet with parents, to give them information, was shared. I think going forward, there does need to be a plan put in place to be able to meet with next year's incoming 8th grade students sometime in the fall. We haven't met to discuss what that's going to look like or what that's going to look like, although at an administrative leadership team meeting this Thursday, we'll begin the process of talking about that. Because again, it should not be January that we are talking to parents about what their student may benefit from at the high school level. And so we do have some work to do on our end with regards to that. And then we also have some work to do with helping both parents and students understand the importance of all of the assessments that we give students. We give students assessments that help drive and change instructional practice, and we give assessments that are in alignment with college readiness standards. And with the recent adoption or impending adoption of the Common Core standards, the assessments that we have chosen are in complete alignment with what those Common Core standards are. So we are, I think, a little bit ahead of where other districts potentially are at this point in time in terms of the assessment tools that we have in place. So I'm here, Karen Sullivan is here, and Diana Smith is here to answer any questions that you might have about either that meeting or any follow-up to that meeting. Mrs. Davey.
Thank you, Dr. Krizik. I attended that meeting because I wanted to hear myself just more details of the program, and I was very impressed with the presentation, with the amount of information that was presented, as well as the acknowledgement of what has been learned in this process, because I was very interested to make sure that it was publicly acknowledged what has been learned and what we need to do to probably improve in the future implementation of this. The one question that seems to be dangling out there is, have we embarked in a program that has no background or no history, and we are being the pioneer of something that there's no other district that has implemented, and we have no best practice research to look at because we're the first ones doing it. Could somebody address that concern that has been brought forward?
There is no magic program to address improving the achievement outcomes for all students across the country, because if there was, every school district across the country would adopt one, put it in place. What they have selected is to target those content areas, i.e. Both literacy and social studies, that are deal a lot with nonfiction, and we know research says that focusing in on nonfiction reading and nonfiction writing is what schools, I'll say, that need to advance their achievement are focusing in on. Recently attending a 90-90-90 conference, and the 90-90-90 conference is schools with 90% diversity, 90% free and reduced lunch, but a 90% high achievement rate. What we learned we heard on last Tuesday and Wednesday validated the choices that were made in the infusion of this program, i.e. the types of literature that they'll be choosing, the focus on extending the time in literacy, those critical pieces, and then using assessments that are aligned, again, with college readiness standards to help monitor student progress and make decisions about whether students should remain or showing growth in the program. So there are elements of this program where they can benchmark and monitor students' progress to assess the, again, feasibility of the program delivery model. And so I don't, there is no one program out there that people are choosing to replicate, and we've chosen to do something so different. We do know that districts who are seeking to change the outcomes for students and make them more successful, both in post-secondary opportunities as well as on future assessments, is a strategic approach to addressing literacy and helping to close that gap. And I believe that that is consistent with best practice literature that we have seen. Have they been innovative by adding elements to a program that are currently, that may not be in existence across the country, i.e. Keeping students in I'll say a cluster where there's an expanded curriculum content, i.e. the world studies, as well as the cohort period? Yes, they are. Are they attempting to be proactive and trying to look at what the impact of those interventions are going to be on students? I believe that's part of their plan, to look at the impact of those interventions. And again, they have embedded a system of, I'll say, checks and balances. And that was what was explained to parents, is that if at the semester period students meet the targeted objectives for the support period, they can then opt out at the semester and enroll in a semester elective class if that is appropriate and meets their needs. So I believe they've tried to be as responsive to everything, and I don't believe there is any of the instructional practices, i.e. as it relates to reading and literacy, that they're putting in place that are not found in the research as being targeted instructional strategies, again, for students that are looking to close the achievement gap for low-performing students.
Mrs. Duroni.
When I first heard about the program, when I first read about it from the material that was sent home to us, I thought, who wouldn't want their child in this? I was feeling cheated that my kids hadn't had the opportunity to have those types of intensive reading and literacy boosts to be able to go on to either college or whatever. Given that, can this approach, this cohort approach, and some of these strategies be used at even earlier grades? I mean, are you thinking about perhaps this is something we need to do at the middle school level as well, when we get students who are showing us red flags in certain areas on certain assessment tools?
I think that's a great question. I think the redesign of the PLUS program that started this year under Dr. Sullivan's, with Dr. Sullivan's assistance and direction, we redesigned the PLUS program to be a targeted reading intervention program at 6th grade this year. They are seeing tremendous results as a result of that. It's a complete shift from the way PLUS had been configured before. They are working to put in place that same program for 7th and 8th grade for next year. So there is that concept of an additional block, so to speak, of targeted reading intervention at the middle schools, 6th grade this year, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade next year. Currently, there is a double block of English language arts at the middle school, and it's a combination of both reading and language arts. The Plus program essentially adds a third period for those students where that is targeted. So I believe that work is already being done in that particular area to answer your question in that way. Going down to the elementary level, some of the strategies that the elementary principals will be putting in place next year are certainly the continued use of guided reading as a strategy. We are looking at block scheduling for both literacy and math in order to be able to implement flexible grouping, in order to help students move where they are instructionally, ensuring that all students receive the core curriculum. So flexible grouping doesn't mean some students are getting an alternative lower curriculum. Everyone's getting the core curriculum. But we are looking to move students where they are ability level. So I believe there are a variety of targeted strategies. In addition to that, Dr. Sullivan and I will be meeting with Mrs. Bailey and Mrs. Greger, and Ms. Brown has a conflict. But we'll have a follow-up to the 90-90-90 conference to look at what are those specific strategies that schools that have that level of diversity and that level of poverty but are getting that level of success, what are those research-based strategies that they have used successfully across the curriculum, and how we then might be able to have targeted 3 to 5 targeted strategies to be infused into their school improvement plans for next school year, so that we begin from the bottom up to hopefully change the course of student achievement over time, and hopefully the numbers of students that are eligible for future cohort programs begin to be reduced over time as a basis, on the basis of interventions that are being infused earlier.
Ms. Hirsch?
Going to try not to knock this over. I want to first say I also attended the cohort parent meeting at York High School, and I want to thank the York administration and staff for doing what I think, unfortunately belated, was a very good job of explaining the purpose of the program, what the intentions were, and what the program is going to look like. I think many parents who were there were able to glean the information that they were looking for. I also appreciate the demeanor in which you presented the information and apologizing for the communications that we could improve upon. And I think that's always a very positive sign of any administrator who is willing to say, made a mistake, won't make it again, we'll fix it in the future. I think the York team did a very good job at that meeting, alleviating parents' concerns and alleviating this board members' concerns or confusions about the program. I do think we as a district still have some work to do in terms of the strength of the unit district is that we are building our students' skills and we are bringing those students into York High School. And I don't know that we have achieved yet the goal of having consistent and uniform communication to parents in terms of their students' particular successes or possible deficiencies that need to be addressed. I do know that we're working on it on many levels, but I think one of the key discussions that I would really like to see is the shift. If these are, in fact, the assessments that we're going to use to identify potential deficiencies in a student's learning and develop an appropriate intervention, then that type of communication also needs to be communicated to parents on a regular basis with context and with some background information on what these particular assessments are and what they're trying to demonstrate. I think in particular at the York meeting, the explanation of the RCBM test was very, very helpful. I could picture myself having to read a script with line numbers and how many words I can clearly read out loud. I think we all were able to understand the value of oral fluency and how that is going to affect a student's potential performance. I think the thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing is tying that in, delivering and administering that test at the 6th grade level, communicating with parents a student's expected performance on that particular test. And again, I know we have a lot of assessments in place, but it's the consistent delivery of those execution of those assessments and the communication to parents so that parents aren't surprised when they make the shift to the high school. Again, I think the cohort program is an excellent program to address a specific identified deficiency, but there, I'm sure, other deficiencies that students might have. This is obviously a very important one. And I believe that our goal in terms of excellent education for all of our students is to identify any potential deficiencies and address them as early as possible. So, in that vein, we're using and we've invested a significant amount of money and resources in the MAPS testing. I look forward to a discussion at the board table of how our students did across grade levels, across schools on these standardized tests where we are assessing students' abilities and our growth year over year and what changes we might need to make in strategies to increase that growth. Those are the types of discussions that I really believe are going to help us as a district focus the board on these types of assessments and the value in those, as well as encouraging and explaining to parents the importance of them and how we make curricular decisions around these types of tests. So I'm really looking forward to seeing a marked shift in how we communicate with parents on these particular assessments. Thank you.
Mr. Kralquist, did you have? No, okay. Mr. Collins.
Just a couple of quick questions. First, kind of an administrative one. A question I was asked that I don't know the answer to is how will participation in the cohort program be reflected on the student's transcript?
There will be no representation that they're in a cohort program on the transcript. It will just indicate the courses that they're in. They will be taking their electives. It'll say English 9, and it will say reading support.
Academic reading.
Academic reading, and so that's how it'll be listed. What they shared that evening is they also had talked to some colleges and universities about the design of this program and received very favorable feedback from colleges and universities about having this course being put in place. They view that as a value-added piece. Students coming out having had this experience, colleges and universities that they contacted did not view this as negative, to use a word, by any means, or to have any future detriment to a student's ability to apply to colleges and universities, at least within the state and those that they had contacted. So there's nothing identifiable that says they were in a cohort program. Nothing.
And then two other quick things. By all accounts, it looks like we've assembled a very good program. And communicated it well, just too late. In the spirit of continuous improvement, what can the administration put in place so that in any new curriculum, in any new thing that we begin to implement to improve student achievement, what procedures can we put in place to make sure that it gets communicated in a timely manner to parents and students?
That's a great question. I'm going to talk about a couple things. One is as we've embarked on this science adoption and review process, we've put out a variety of pieces of information. As a follow-up to this, we are also looking to have a follow-up communication piece to put out to our parents on the whole science adoption process and what will be changing with regards to with the science program for students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for next year. So I think what we've learned in this process is there are some of our existing processes can have added communication elements to them. And so that's one piece. I think when we're embarking on something as strategic as implementing pieces of a school improvement plan, I don't think that we can continue to rely on expecting parents to review the school improvement plans that are posted online or to review information that's posted in newsletters or that are sent home, that it has to be a little bit more strategic in terms of how that's communicated. I can't say to you this evening, Mr. Collins, exactly what that's going to look like, but I think some of the communication strategies that we have in place have not been completely effective. identifying the most effective strategy is something that we're going to continue to tinker with. I mean, that obviously is what we try to do. And in cases when we believe we have done it well, in some cases, there still continues to be confusion about what the program is or is not. So even when we have done a really good job on some of those things, there seems to be a communication gap because the vehicles that we have chosen are not vehicles that all parents are either reading or attending. I know that some of the PTAs have been very proactive in inviting curriculum coordinators to come to their meetings to make presentations. So I know that Charlotte Kula has been at a variety of meetings talking about REACH and some of the REACH changes. I know that we try to use our website to communicate information. We do put it out in a variety of different ways. Not every parent attends every meeting, so they're not going to hear all of the information. And, you know, as much as we'd like to think everybody wants to listen to every word we say at the board table, not all the information that is presented very thoroughly at the board table is listened to or read by our constituency as well. That is not saying that we will not continue to try to do things differently, or when there's something so a dramatic shift in terms of a curriculum implementation that we will not put that out in different ways and use different processes to do that. But I don't think there's one way to do that on any of these programs.
Right. And then one last thing to kind of expand on what Ms. Hirsch said. I think part of the surprise, consternation of parents whose students were identified from the program was that, again, they didn't quite understand where their students placed nationally every time they got a MAP results back as just one piece of it. But let's focus on MAP for a second. How can we be more transparent in our reporting of MAP scores, and especially in putting it in context for parents as where their student places in the context of the entire nation?
And I'm going to let Dr. Sullivan maybe talk about the reports that parents do get, because there are reports that are sent home to parents that actually provide that information. And then what maybe some of our plans are in terms of trying to expand, adding some information on the website to give parents some additional linkages. Oh, is there a...
It's on, I think. Is it on? It is on. Okay. We've actually been talking to some of the folks at MAP about what some of their reports look like and whether we can make some variations to what their reports look like to maybe make them a little more interpretable to some parents. But at this point, we don't have that ability yet. They're looking at that. I know buildings. I know some of the middle schools actually did assessment meetings where they talked about the MAP reports and the MAP data. Unfortunately, they had about, I think, 12 parents, I think, at one of the middle schools that came that night for that particular meeting. So, you know, I think we'll have to look at any and all. I mean, I still think those are things that we can do where we're, you know, putting those forms, those reports up and saying this is what this means or this is what it doesn't mean. We try to do that with the cover letters that go out with those particular assessments, but we'll also have to work at, you know, are there some other strategies and ways that we can get that? Sometimes until you get the one, because I'm a parent who gets one of those MAP reports on my son, until you get your own child's, that's when you're really interested. So maybe the issue is, you know, when those first reports come out, that's when we, you know, hold those type of meetings or put that kind of information up for them.
I once met with one of my daughter's principals when she got her MAP scores to kind of help me put it in context. And what he was able to do was pull up on his computer a matrix of scores, and it really put it in context for me because I found out what percentile of the nation that score represented in that subject for my daughter at that grade level. But then also, he was able to show me that that score also represented the 50th percentile or the average kid at another grade level. Thank God it was a year or two ahead of where she actually was. But those two pieces of information, to put it in context, really, really helped me. I was able to find that exact same matrix of scores on another school district's website. Is there any way that we can put that? I just found that so helpful. Is there any way we can get it onto our website?
Yeah, we can look, and there are some other examples that we can put up. The other issue for us is looking at the national norms. For us, our district performs higher than the national norms. And so our expectation is that our students are going to be above the national norms. So it's also communicating that, for example, I think it was the 62nd percentile on the MAP score in middle school, which comes up on the MAP report as saying, I believe, high average, which sounds like that would be great. We've found, along with other districts who've done this study, puts students at risk to not meet standards on the ACT. So even though at a 67th percentile nationally, that sounds good, but what the data is showing across the higher achieving districts is that's not good enough, which is one of the things that's confusing about when you get that MAP report, and that's one of the things we've talked to them about. If that is in fact the case, that's hard to interpret to a parent why it says my students in the doing in a high average range, and yet that score tells us that they may have difficulty meeting standards on the PSAE and on the ACT.
That you bring up a great point. Is there a way that we can also communicate that via the website, via having a resource for parents to not only see where their child is nationally, but also if we can relate it to the PSAE or even better yet, the ACT as a predictive measure, how do we get that up there so that people can put it into context?
And the other thing that we've talked about is just having, we've had people come in and talk to our administrators about MAP data and getting a deeper understanding, and we're going to do that again this summer with administration about how to work with their teams with the MAP data, how to work with our teachers, how to also do some of the things in terms of explaining those reports and things to parents and what that means. But we certainly need and can do a better job with putting some of those things on our website.
Thank
you. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, I can't mute the microphone. Granted, there has been a fair amount of criticism of the program in one dimension or another, the adoption process, the implementation, the selection, the communications, and the like. That criticism is played out in the public media, and it's played out in direct dialogue with the administration, even here at the board table. And while it's true that anything worth doing is worth doing well, at the risk of sounding positive, I think it's important for us as a board, and especially in setting tone and expectations across the district, how important it is to recognize, I think, a couple key elements of this whole process. The first is there is a cohort of students who have very special needs that need to be addressed, and a choice could have been made to work further on the refinement of the curriculum, on the development of the deployment plan, all the other elements of change management. And there would have been a cohort of students who would have progressed yet another year and not have had access to the specialized services that are being offered as a part of this program. And I think that's very important to recognize. I think the other piece that's a corollary to that is that while we are a unit district and we do need to have strategies, as you discussed, Dr. Krizik, that are infused at every level within our district to address student needs, to help them progress and reach the ultimate standards that we expect. Here was a high school administration, department chair, set of teachers that took it upon themselves to be proactive, to implement, to propose and to implement these changes because they were student-centered, that they were focused on the needs of those students. And in any organization, one can show leadership, one could be a fast follower, or one could be a laggard. And I think as a district, District 205 has often prided itself on showing leadership, and I think this is an area that shows that sometimes leadership has with it some rough edges, and there's always things to be learned from that, and I have confidence, quite hopeful that collectively as a district that a lot of learning has gone on through this, as with other implementations. But I do think it's worth emphasizing that to show leadership, to have the courage to be proactive with the deployment of a new set of capabilities that are, again, in particular in this case, this wasn't financially driven. This wasn't how do we save money. This wasn't how do we get published or whatever. This is how do we address the needs of a very specific group of students before it gets any later in their educational career. And so for that, on behalf of the board, as one board member, I'd like to say thank you for those who helped show some of that leadership.
I do have one quick question, and again, there were several board members that were able to attend this, and I thought I got huge value out of the evening. I appreciated the fact that the administration stayed until the last question was answered, which butted pretty close to 10 o'clock in the evening. And I don't think at the end of the day there was anybody that didn't see the value of the support of the reading. The couple of maybe lingering concerns that I heard, and one of them I think was addressed pretty well, the lack of a science in coming into freshman year, and I think that the addition of the summer school science program with the reading support was a very creative way to meet that need. The two areas maybe that I think are the story will be told in the future. I heard at least one parent maybe talk about foreign language and that being a limitation. And then a couple parents were concerned about perhaps a stigma of, what that reading class was called when it comes through on their transcript. So you're not seeing you're in a cohort program, but at a little bit different description. I think, as Mr. Carlquist said, our focus is about improving the outcome for all of these students. So we have a program. I walked out of there thinking that this is, really a great program, and from what I was comparing to, probably one of the strongest ones around. How are we going to, measure the performance of these students? And I know there's a mid-year way to come out, but at the end of the day, we're saying we want to see improved college readiness. Are we tracking the individual students? Are we waiting, I assume we're not waiting till we see the outcome of the ACT and the impact of that is, and how do we look at this program perhaps evolving over the next year or two, absent the communication process?
Diane and Mary, if I say something incorrect, then just, please correct me. One of the things that York is looking at currently is redesigning their assessment system. Correct? And looking at giving students in the freshman year the plan instead of the sophomore year. Wait, yes? Yes. We're talking about that. Looking to do a retired ACT in the sophomore year, and then the ACT in the junior year. That's one piece. That's one piece to this. There is the opportunity to use the MAP assessment for the students that are in the cohort program, so we'll be able to measure the growth between their 8th grade MAP score and their 9th grade MAP score. They will be using reading CBMs. We'll be able to measure growth with the reading CBMs. So we'll have, I'll say, short-term assessment data, and then we'll have the long-term assessment data. Because we also know from the Explore score, there's a predictability score on the plan and a predictability score on the ACT. We'll then be able to look at what the plan score is. We'll be able to look at what the ACT score is to see what impact is the academic reading program having or in the combination of strategies that are being used on altering the outcomes of the predicted plan and ACT score based on the Explore they took in 8th grade. So there are a variety of data points that they'll be looking at, and no, they're not waiting 3 years to say, did this all blossom and it took place 2 years later. I think they're going to look at, again, the short term is the reading CBM and the administration of the map, so they have that data, and then to look at plan as well as looking at the retired ACT and the ACT. In addition, whether there are additional common assessments that will be developed as part of the program, as part of even the English 9 program. I know that that is a movement that we're implementing in terms of creating more common assessments. And then they'll be able to look at what is the rate of success and progress on students that are in the academic support, academic reading program compared to other students, and being able to look at how they're even performing in English 9, as well as how are students that are in the academic reading program performing on World Studies common assessments. I think that's another linkage and another assessment data point that they'll be looking at as well. So are they performing as well as or better than all other students, or are they not performing as well as or worse than? So I do believe they have a lot of data. That speaks to the point is, how are we going to manage all that data? Who's going to be looking at all of that data? Who's going to be analyzing all that data? It really is, it's a complicated process, and we are trying to ask our administrators as well as our teachers to use more and more data, but we have to be able to put it in a system and or a framework that's usable and understandable, but we also need individuals to help explain what the data means and to lead those conversations, not just with parents, but with staff and with teams. So, we know we have to make we made budgetary decisions this past year to put on hold the Director of Research and Assessment, but we're going to try to figure out a way to afford that as a recommendation going forth for the following year, because I can't believe we're going to be able to keep up and manage this data wisely and effectively without having someone having total responsibility for managing all of that. So if York said, could someone please run for us a profile of our kids and run these variables? We need, someone's got to do that work. And, it's not the building principal can drop everything and do that, and it's not the department chair can, drop everything and do that. Two is we want to look at patterns and trends, as Ms. Hirsch talked about. We need to look at harnessing the unit of harnessing the energy of the entire unit district. We want to see patterns and trends across the district, within a school, between grade levels within a school. Again, that's going to take not only a system, but that's going to take some really strategic thinking, but it's also going to take manpower at some point in time. And so we're going to have to figure out a way, and we're going to have to figure out a way to afford that at some point in the very near future. Otherwise, what we're asking, our staff's going to be frustrated with everything that we're asking them to do.
Okay, should we move on to our next item for superintendent communication?
I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Masterton, who I'm not going to ask to shout, but to use the microphone. About a month ago, Ms. Masterton came to you with recommendations for changes in our facility fees as it relates to our buildings. Phase 2 of this was to do some additional work on looking at the stadium and pool use. And so she's going to review for you a proposal that has been discussed with a variety of different people, and that will come forth to you in the form of a recommendation at the next business meeting. So this is the opportunity to review this, ask questions, and get a good understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with this. Ms. Masterton.
Thank you, Dr. Krizik. Now, can you hear me? It's okay? Okay. Mr. Smith is going to put up the chart of our recommendations for stadium fees. I'd like to go down to the aquatic center fees first and talk about those, because we actually already have aquatic center hourly charges already set up, and all we're doing is basically recommending a roundup. Currently, our pool charge for Group A is $8, and we're recommending we round it up to $10. Group B is $28, and rounding up to $30, et cetera. So all we're doing is just increasing the guard charge a little bit and the supervisor charge to reflect increases in salary that are going on, and otherwise from that, this is basically the same. The stadium charge, we worked with Mr. Rudder, who was kind enough to get a number of different bits of information from other school districts who have stadiums, in particular stadiums that have turf. Which are, we have had a number of inquiries from a lot of outside groups who are very interested in using the stadium. And so we sort of took together and went through all of the research that he did, and we came up with some hourly charges for the stadium. We decided that we needed to divert from the daily charges simply because really it's probably not the best way to work a program, particularly in a building or a facility as large as a stadium. It's better to go with the hourly, and we had made the recommendation that we were going to begin to start looking at hourly rates next year instead of daily rates. So the stadium charge, of course, for Group A would continue to be $0. Group B on an hourly basis, $75, Group C, $150, and Group D, $250. We asked for a press box charge. If they cared to use the press box, there'd be an additional charge of $0, $30, $50, and $70. And then we computed how much it costs by the hour to run the lights, and it's $25 an hour. So just for the stadium, and so we did that. Please note we did not include the concession stands. The reason being that we have our own inventory in the concession stands, so we don't want anyone actually using the concession stands because we can't guarantee the security of our own materials and our equipment in there. And then the supervision charge is the same charge that we have for any of our areas in the district. However, in the case of the stadium, we will require a supervisor to be on site on an hourly basis because of the fact that it is the turf. It can be damaged. It's it's a very good investment that we want to keep safe and secure, and so we are going to be asking for that, and also because there's not going to be small groups that are going to, for these prices that are going to be using the stadium. They're going to be large groups. We need the supervision for it. So those are the charges that we're asking, and we'll bring it back at the end of the month and ask you to approve them.
Mrs. Deroni.
Could you please just run through for us what the different groups, who's in these different groups?
Group A groups are groups that are directly affiliated with the school district. The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boosters. Some of those groups are the PTA. Those are direct groups with us. Group B are nonprofit Elmhurst groups. For instance, the Airborne, Elmhurst Airborne, the different sports groups. They're nonprofit groups, but they are Elmhurst groups only. Group C are, for the most part, educational institutions in Elmhurst or in DuPage County, nonprofits within Elmhurst or DuPage County, and Group D is just private industry for the most part, people that and companies or groups that are not affiliated with Elmhurst or Elmhurst 205.
Mr. Carlquist.
It's my assumption, and at least been my observation of the practice, but I just want to render it specific, especially as we begin to deal with resources or assets like the stadium and charges that start to increase, that that is still intended to be the district's practice not to have revenue, in essence, trump a school or school-related interest in the facilities. So if a school group has plans for the facilities, that we would never expect that a revenue-generating organization would trump or take precedence over that school use or need for that property. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry, there's a delay from when I turn it on and go from there. That is correct. And in fact, for most of our facilities, we don't even allow reservations until we actually have our calendar filled with all the school activities. In the case of the stadium and the aquatic center, and really in the case of anything else, if we have an activity that arises that isn't on the calendar, even if we have a reservation with another group, we'll try to accommodate them in a different area, but you know, the school activities always come first.
Ms. Hirsch.
Ms. Masterton, do you have an idea of, I'm interested in the organizations that are interested in using the facility, for instance, during the summer. And I'm interested, I have no idea how many requests we have, but the turf does require some maintenance in terms of expenditures to the district, and long-term needs to be replaced. I think it's 10 years, if I recall correctly. You know, has there been any consideration that we take any revenues that are generated from the use of the field and the stadium to put it in a fund to replace the turf in 10 years and to cover those maintenance expenditures to help ameliorate those costs?
The revenue from the stadium and from all the facility usage does go into operations and maintenance. So it already does do that, although the idea of putting away for future replacement is not a bad idea. You know, it's an interesting idea. I do not know all of the groups. I know we have all the practices that are going to be going on. We have the sports camps. We have a number of different things. I do know of one group, and that is a youth group on weekends from the Bears are actually looking to do some kind of camp for a couple of weekends in there. So that's one that we've heard. Mr. Rutter would be able to, and I could probably get that information to you in my next communication to the board of what we've seen so far. He's been kind of keeping track of it.
Can I add something? If I could add to Ms. Hirsch's question, when the whole proposal for the turf and the finances of it looking long-term came up, one thing that was considered in that eventually 10 years or 12 years when it has to be replaced, how and do we do anything to try to reserve money? One of the things that will become available is the naming rights aren't forever. They have a time period. And so in 10 years, there will be an opportunity for possibly a change in or an additional revenue. Isn't that correct, Dr. Krizik?
We've not sold any naming rights to the stadium?
Well, I mean the current field.
I'm not understanding the question.
I just thought that when that donation was made, there was a time limit put on it.
But the donation never came to naming rights. The donation came to just a recognition and an acknowledgement as you walk into the stadium. So it never came to fruition that there was a request to either rename the field and or the stadium. That got, I'll say, repackaged in a different way to just have a dedication, and that was just a dedication plaque that's put outside of the stadium. So we've at this point in time not embarked on any selling of any naming rights to any piece of the stadium.
Okay, well, I guess then maybe that still leaves an opportunity for, if we have to raise revenue to do a replacement, then that would become an option that we might consider at the time,
that can be a
10 years
future
from now, or whenever we need it.
In 10 years from now, if we want to embark on it, yes.
Thank you.
And one thing that's probably, to be taken into consideration too is that the original building costs of the stadium and particularly the turf included the water needs and drainage needs, which we won't have to do again. So really, it really comes down to just a carpet replacement. That's really what it is carpet replacement. So, and that will be significantly less money than how much we paid originally for everything.
My initial comment when I saw this is when is the stadium available to rent? Because holy cow, you drive by. I mean, I would have to guess that the utilization of the field is probably at the highest end that we would have expected. It seems like every group is using it from the high school, maybe throughout the district. So while I think we need to be looking at every opportunity for what revenue, I have to reiterate Mr. Carlquist's comments. You know, the primary intent of this is education for our children in our district. So we wouldn't want to be limiting that. And I guess just overall, we did have a projected life for this field. Depending on the utilization, that could change. 10 years might not be, you know, if we're, you know, using it more than we would have thought, great success for this project. But again, depending on what kind of groups we'd have in here and what they would be doing, I'm sure that appropriate judgment would be used to make sure that we're not shortening the life of our field.
The life of the field was 10 to 12 years that was projected, and that was with high use, high utilization use. And we obviously would evaluate every request, and we don't have to accept every request that we make. As it relates to utilization, during the year, Sundays is probably the only time that would not be an academic use. We don't have teams practicing on Sundays or competing on Sundays. And in the summer, there's different opportunities because our sports camps are generally in the morning, and we have very few competitions that are happening in the summer. So the only options potentially include Sundays, maybe some Saturday evenings at some point in the future, as well as then sometime in the summer. But if, as you've indicated, you cannot go past that field, Mrs. Ostojic, with not seeing students, York students, on that field from 5:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, pretty much 5 days a week. It's in addition to, we have the PE programs out there, and so everything that we intended that field to be, it became that and more.
Okay, we're going to move on to the superintendent's consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda. Any discussion needed on that? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Carlquist?
I move that the Board of Education approve the admission of foreign exchange student B from Germany to York High School for the 2010-2011 school year.
Thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Conroy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is upcoming meetings. Our second meeting in this month will be Tuesday, May 25th, scheduled at 7:30 here in this room. And then following that, June 15th, we will have our Board of Education business meeting, also 7:30, located in this building. We have action coming out of closed session. I will accept a motion. Mrs. Davy?
I move to authorize the president to sign a memorandum of understanding with our PSRP bargaining unit.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Davy, second by Mr. Carlquist. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will have a vote call. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. I have another motion. Mrs. Davy?
I move that we allow Mr. Robert Shields to be released from his irrevocable letter of retirement, to allow him to retire at the end of the 2010 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Conroy. Any board discussion? I'm going to just ask for maybe a brief comment from Dr. Krizik. We know that Mr. Shields is looking to retire early. We know that as far as the school district is concerned, financially, there's no disadvantage to us for taking this action.
No, that's there is no penalty for Mr. Shields retiring 2 years earlier. In essence, there is a cost savings to allowing Mr. Shields to retire early, as there is a cost savings to the salary we would have paid him for 2011-12 and 12-13, 10-11 and 11-12. I'm sorry, 10-11 and 11-12. And then there is some cost realization savings in the difference in his salary versus the cost of replacement teacher. So there is no fiscal disincentive for us not to approve this.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. I have a motion on employment of employees. Oh, that was the one we already took. Okay, so that would be it. Are there any board communications? Ms. Hirsch?
I just wanted to apologize. We had a policy committee meeting scheduled for Thursday. We have yet another scheduling conflict, and so that meeting will be scheduled again for June, date to be announced.
Mr. Carlquist?
As an update for the full board, Mrs. Conroy and I represent us on the joint city and park district and school district intergovernmental committee. We met once again this past week, during which time each of the agencies discuss some topics either of general interest to one another or to update the other entities on the goings-on or those things that are of priority focus for the respective agencies. As a school district representatives, along with Dr. Krizik, we gave a status on our budget development process, where we stood, what some of the actions were that were taken, what the scope of the gap is that we have to, that we were trying to solve for. Some of the threats that we see continuing, including the likely delinquency of the state of Illinois and the magnitude of that gap. Beyond that, the City and Park District talked about some joint development projects that they're working on in terms of facilities and paths and the like. And then there was also some exploration around opportunities for collaboration between one agency and the other. And so, there are no decisions that have been made or nothing ready yet to bring to the board for any type of action or evaluation. But looking at places where respective expertise or resources could, in pool together, could create better efficiencies, economies of scale for the community in total and all taxpayers. For example, lawn maintenance across fields, school district property, and the like. And then, as part of the city's update, there was also some discussion about budget and budget concerns, and relevant to this board's recent discussions around TIF and the role that TIF plays and the status of the existing TIFs. The city representatives that were there made reference to the fact that they, in the challenges that they face from a budgeting standpoint, there aren't many tools left available to them to be able to continue to spur economic development and sources of revenue to support that, and that in fact TIF, or maybe TIFs plural, could still be considered as tools for future economic development in Elmhurst. Ms. Conroy, do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mr. Carlquist. Mrs. Conroy, any other board communications? Seeing none, it's a minute before 9. Can we do this tonight? I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? This motion is adjourned.
Go Hawks.
The meeting is adjourned.